Somewhere under a green mountain on the edge of a city called Taipei, there is a vault. Inside it, almost 700,000 objects, bronzes, scrolls, porcelain so fine you can read through it. The private art collection of China's emperors. 1,000 years of civilization in climate-controlled darkness. It is, by most accounts, the greatest collection of Chinese art on Earth. Now the strange part. The country guarding it, officially, does not exist. It has a currency, an army, elections, 23 million people, and diplomatic recognition from roughly a dozen governments. Most of the world's maps won't print its name as a country. And the country that claims it, the largest country in Asia, has never governed it. Not for 1 year, not for 1 day. Militaries on 3 continents plan around this island. Economists call it the single most dangerous point of failure in the world economy. And every serious war game about World War III starts here. So this is tonight's investigation. How does one island end up holding the emperor's treasures, the world's most important factories, and the fuse to the biggest war never fought? As always, the answer has dates. Let's follow the evidence. Start with the question everyone thinks has an obvious answer. Whose island is it, historically? The record is messier than either side likes. For most of history, Taiwan belongs to the people already on it. Austronesian islanders, there for thousands of years. The Dutch build forts in the 1620s. A Ming loyalist pirate king throws them out. And in 1683, the Qing Empire annexes the island, and then treats it for 2 centuries like a malarial attic. It only becomes a full Chinese province in 1885, which turns out to be spectacularly bad timing, because 10 years later, China loses a war to Japan. And in the Treaty of Shimonoseki, 1895, Taiwan is handed over. The treaty's exact words, ceded to Japan in perpetuity. Write that word down. Perpetuity is about to have the shelf life of a yogurt. Japan runs Taiwan for 50 years, as a colony, with a colony's cruelties, but also with railways, schools, industry. A generation of Taiwanese grows up writing Japanese. And when Japan collapses in 1945, the Allies hand the island to the Republic of China. On paper, a homecoming, promised at Cairo in 1943. 50 years apart. What could go wrong? Here's what went wrong. The administration that arrived in 1945 came from a country shattered by war, and it governed the island like a prize to be stripped. Factories dismantled, grain requisitioned, inflation in the thousands of %. The islanders had waited 50 years to be Chinese again, and within 18 months, many were whispering that the Japanese, of all people, had governed better. Then, February 27, 1947, agents beat a widow selling untaxed cigarettes in Taipei. A crowd gathers, a shot is fired, and the next day, February 28th, the island rises. The government's answer was not negotiation. Troops arrived from the mainland, and in the weeks that followed, somewhere between 18 and 28,000 people were killed. Doctors, lawyers, students, a generation of the island's elite. It has a quiet name, 228. For the next 4 decades, saying that name out loud on Taiwan could get you arrested. Remember 228. Underneath every argument about this island, under the treaties and the communiques, there is a family that remembers who never came home. Memory, as we keep learning on this channel, is the terrain everything else is built on. 1949. On the mainland, the Chinese Civil War, 20 years of it, ends in communist victory. October 1st. Mao proclaims the People's Republic of China in Beijing. And the losing side, Chiang Kai-shek's nationalists, does something extraordinary. It picks up a country and carries it across the water. 1 to 2 million soldiers, officials, families, the national treasury's gold. And this is where our vault comes from. Nearly 700,000 pieces of the imperial art collection, crated up and shipped to an island most of the passengers had never seen. So now there are 2 governments. And here is the detail that explains the next 70 years, so lean in. Both of them claimed to be China. All of it. The People's Republic in Beijing claimed Taiwan. The Republic of China on Taiwan claimed the entire mainland. For decades, its official maps included Mongolia. Mortal enemies, with identical maps. The one thing Mao and Chiang never disagreed about was that there was exactly one China, and Taiwan was part of it. The idea that Taiwan might be something else, a place of its own, was forbidden on both sides of the strait at once. Hold that thought. It's the trap the whole story springs later. Why didn't Beijing simply finish the war in 1950? Because history interrupted. War broke out in Korea, and overnight, Washington decided the strait was a line the Cold War would not cross. The U.S. 7th Fleet sailed in between. The invasion window closed, and stayed closed. Twice in the 50s, the 2 Chinas shelled each other over tiny islands with names like Quemoy and Matsu. The world held its breath twice, and the line held. Meanwhile, on the island itself, the government that called itself Free China was running one of the longest stretches of martial law in modern history. 38 years. Around 140,000 people imprisoned, thousands executed. They fled a dictatorship and built one with better branding. The evidence does not do heroes and villains here. It does documents. And the documents say, for 40 years, the strait held 2 authoritarian states, each insisting it was the real China, and one very nervous American fleet in between. Now for the fact that sounds invented. For 22 years after losing the Civil War, the government on Taiwan, population then around 10 million, held China's seat at the United Nations, not observer status, the China seat, on the Security Council, with a veto. But by 1971, most of the world had done the math. You can't seat a quarter of humanity's government in exile forever. Resolution 2758, 76 votes to 35. The People's Republic becomes the only legitimate representative of China, and Taipei's delegation walks out before the vote finishes. Here's the part that stings in the archives. There were compromise proposals, 2 seats, dual representation. Chiang refused them all. One China, he said. On that, Beijing agreed completely. The one thing both Chinas ever agreed on, that there could only be one, is the thing that took Taipei's chair. 8 years later, the other shoe. January 1st, 1979. The United States switches recognition to Beijing. But Congress, in the same breath, passes the Taiwan Relations Act, unofficial ties, defensive weapons, and a deliberate, engineered silence about whether America would actually fight. They gave the silence a name: strategic ambiguity. Remember it. It's still the operating system of the entire Pacific. And then the island did the one thing nobody's script allowed. It changed what it was. Martial law lifted, 1987. Opposition legalized. And in 1996, for the first time in 4,000 years of Chinese-speaking civilization, A society of that world elected its own leader directly by universal vote. Beijing's response to that election was to fire missiles into the sea on either side of the island. Washington's response was to sail 2 carrier groups into the neighborhood. The voters' response was to vote anyway. Turnout, 76%. And with democracy came a quieter revolution. You can watch it move through 3 decades of polling. In 1992, about 1 islander in 6 called themselves Taiwanese, not Chinese. Today, it's a strong majority, and the generation under 40 barely remembers the question being real. Which changed the dispute at its core. This stopped being 2 governments arguing over which one was China and became something much harder to solve. One government claiming an island, whose people increasingly answer, "Neither of you. We're from here." So why hasn't it already happened? 2 reasons, and the first one is a factory. In 1987, the same year martial law ended, Taiwan founded a company called TSMC. Today, that company and its neighbors fabricate roughly 90% of the world's most advanced chips. The phone in your hand, the car you drive, the missiles on every side of this argument. Economists estimate the first year of a Taiwan war at over $1 trillion of global damage, a number so large it functions as armor. They call it the Silicon Shield. The island the world won't recognize is protected by the fact that the world cannot function without it. The second reason is that ambiguity we met in 1979. Nobody in this triangle is certain what America would do, including, by design, America. But the file shows the space narrowing. 2005, Beijing writes into law that non-peaceful means follow any formal independence. 2019, unification declared inevitable, offered under the formula 1 country, 2 systems. 2020, the world watches that exact formula meet Hong Kong, and on Taiwan, its support collapses to single digits. The offer died on live television. Since 2022, Chinese aircraft cross the Strait's median line nearly every day. This year, Coast Guard ships took up permanent patrol east of the island, the geometry of a quarantine, held 1 order away. No war, no blockade. A strait living in the gray zone between them, as this film is released. So, the actual question. Why is this island the one every war game starts with? Not because of ancient hatred. You've seen the file. For 2,000 years, almost nobody powerful wanted it. It's because 3 unfinished things ended up stacked on 1 rock. An unfinished civil war. 1949 never got a peace treaty, only a fleet in the way. An unfinished question of identity. A people who, given 70 years and a ballot box, quietly became someone neither China planned for. And an unfinished sentence from America. Ambiguity, by design, for 47 years and counting. Add the factories the world can't live without, and you have the tightrope everyone on Earth is standing on, mostly without knowing it. We've hung 3 maps on this wall now. A river in the Middle East, a line through Punjab, a paper promise in Budapest. The pattern holds one more time. Nothing here is ancient, and nothing here was inevitable. It was built, decision by decision, treaty by treaty, silence by silence, by people who mostly thought they were solving a different problem. Under the Green Mountain, the Emperor's treasures wait in the dark, as they have for 77 years, owned by a civilization, guarded by a question. The last crate has never been unpacked. Somewhere in this decade, someone will decide what this island is. Until then, the strait stays quiet the way a held breath is quiet. The evidence stays open on the desk. Sleep well.